solving multi-step inequalities, or in other words, inequalities that contain more than one operation. But before we start, we're going to remind ourselves that we can use the same rules as if we're solving a multi-step equation, but we have to remember to reverse the inequality symbol if you, that's a big blank to fill in there, reverse the inequality symbol if you Andrea says multiply or divide by a negative. Do we agree? Okay, good job. Multiply or divide by a negative. Let's fill that in. We cannot forget that everything else will be just as if we were solving an equation. But if one of our steps of work leads us to multiply or divide by a negative, we have to stop and say, I need to reverse the inequality symbol. Okay? Okay, so let's just go right to practicing here. We have our 3x plus 6 is, what does this symbol say right here?
Less than or equal to.
Is less than or equal to negative 12. What's going to be our first step of work? What did we decide yesterday? That we should always undo what first? Addition or subtraction, multiplication, division?
Subtraction and addition.
Yeah, the addition and subtraction. So what would be your first step here?
Minus 6.
Subtract 6 from both sides. Okay, let's go to work. 3x is now by itself. We did not multiply or divide. We were subtracting, so we don't have to worry about anything with the inequality symbol. What is a negative 12 take away a 6?
Negative 18.
Negative 18, yeah, it's like our weather right now. Maybe it was negative 12 before we went to bed. The temperature dropped another 6 degrees during the night, and we woke up to a negative 18 below zero. Actually, it's pretty close to that. It was negative 16. So, okay, what's going to be our next step?
Divide by 3.
Divide both sides by 3. So now we'll take both sides and divide by 3. And what does our inequality read? X what?
X is less than or equal.
Wait a
Greater
minute.
than or
Did
equal.
we divide by a positive or a negative?
Divide by positive.
Okay, so do we have to reverse it?
Yeah. No.
By a negative? Do we divide by a negative? No, so we're going to leave it as it is. And negative 18 divided by 3, negative 6. So here's our algebraic solution, our solution that says all real numbers less than or equal to negative 6 would make that inequality true. Go ahead and graph it because you, of course, have had lots of practice at this. Okay, remember, and don't forget to use good number line sense, that you should have the numbers labeled correctly, the neighbors. Okay, now I know, I'm pretty wise this way. I know you're not going to take a number from that solution region and go all the way back to the original inequality and stick it in and see if it checks out. But I think some of us need to make sure that we are taking the time, because this is still happening, make sure your graph matches your solution, okay? So I could take the integer neighbor that's in the shaded region, and I could just take that, and just take a moment and do it. You don't have to write it down. Just do it, even a mental math. I could put that negative 7 in for x, and I could say, is negative 7 less than negative 6? Is it colder outside when it's negative 7 than it is when it's negative 6? Yes, it is less than. So I would feel pretty good about the side that I shaded. Take the time to do that, okay? Doesn't hurt anything. Anybody have any questions on that one? Okay, let's go on to this next one then. What do we have 29. What's that symbol read? What is our symbol?
Greater than.
Is greater than, isn't it? That symbol reads is greater than. So what's going to be our first step of work in this one? Subtract 8. Okay, go ahead and do that. Get this After that step, let's try really hard not to use our calculators. Come on, but these are not hard math problems. Okay, I end up with 21 is greater than negative 3y. Anybody agree with me? Okay, what would be your next step? Sydney, what would you do next?
Divide by negative 3.
Okay, divide by negative 3. So take both of those sides and divide them by negative 3. What happens when we divide by a negative? We need to reverse the sign. And yes, we also have to think about what happens, what can we say without having to use our calculator. What's a positive divided by a negative? A negative, and 21 divided by 3 is 7, so we end up with a negative 7. Do we need to reverse that to is less than? Yes. And this over here becomes y. Okay, so we reverse the symbol y because we divide it by a negative. Some of us don't like the variable on the right side because it's easier to graph when it's on the left side. So can we reverse it again? Are we allowed to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. All we're going to do is reverse it so that we're just going to rename it. We want the y on the left side and we want the negative 7 on the right side. So if we're going to do that, we've got to flip that over, don't we? So we flipped it twice. Once because we divided by a negative. Second time because we wanted it to be renamed to make it easier to graph. Okay, go ahead and get it graphed. I want you to do a mental math check now. I want you to take the integer neighbor that's in the shaded region, and I want you to substitute it in and make sure it checks out. No matter whether you renamed it or you left it like it was. Did we do it right? You feeling pretty good about it?
Wait, so what you mean by that? I would take the negative 6 and substitute that for y.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So if we put it in this one, we have negative 6 is, or negative 7, excuse me, negative 7 is less than negative 6. Is that true? Is negative 7 less than negative 6?
Yeah.
Okay. If we put it in this one, now we're saying negative 6 is greater than negative 7. Is that true? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're feeling pretty good about at least our shaded part, aren't we? Okay. Anybody have any questions? You're like, no, we got this. We did this yesterday. Okay, one more. What should we start out with? Samuel? Add 4 to both sides. Yep, let's add 4 to both sides. Thank you, Samuel. What's negative 8 plus 4? No calculators, come on. It's 8 below 0. The temperature goes up 4 degrees. What's it outside now? Negative 4. Oh my goodness. You know what? When we live in North Dakota, we get to talk about negative stuff all the time. Come on, we don't need calculators. Okay, what are we going to do now?
Times negative 2 over 1.
Yeah, we're going to multiply by that reciprocal because we got a fraction involved there. So now we're going to take both sides times the reciprocal of negative 1/2. And as Adam said, that's negative 2 over 1. So negative 2 over 1 is this way. We can really actually do it then without our calculators. Negative. The other side, we're also going to have to multiply times that negative 2 over 1. What can we do with that negative 4 since we're multiplying it by a fraction?
Make it into a positive.
No, we can't put it over 1. Put 1 under it to make it into its own, make it into a fraction also. Okay? Now, on this side, a negative times a negative is a positive, so they take care of each other. And 2 over 1 times 1/2, what is that? They cancel each other out, don't they? They become 1, and that's what we want is a 1x. Did we multiply or divide by a negative? What do we have to do then? Change our sign. Negative times a negative is a
Positive.
positive. 2 times 4 is
8.
8. And because we got ones downstairs, it's like we can ignore them. And again, we don't need the calculator. Okay, go ahead and get that graph. And do an integer neighbor check. Make sure you shade it correctly. Can anybody in here tell me, how would we do a check to make sure we have the right endpoint? You know, the one that we decide the integer neighbors of? How do we decide that that positive 8 is a good endpoint? How do we make that decision? What if we have a semester final coming up next week, you'll be doing this stuff on it. How can you make certain that you have a good endpoint? Don't make me make you start doing it. Come on.
Add the
Here's what we would do. We take it up here. We put it in the original inequality for the x. Okay, so we're going to put an 8 in there, aren't we? So what's a negative times a positive? A negative. What's half of 8? 4. So that becomes negative 4. And then we have subtract 4 from that. And then we have that on the other side. We have a negative 8. We're not going to worry about that right now. We're going to say, what is, if it's negative 4 outside and the temperature drops another 4 degrees, where does it end up at? Negative 8. So that's what helps us check out the endpoint. If we end up with the same thing on both sides, we have a good endpoint. When we're checking the other way, when we're doing the neighbors, now we're checking the shaded part. So 9 is our integer neighbor in the shaded region. Is 9 greater than 8? Yeah, it is. So we can say we have a good shaded region also. Okay, so this is what you'll be doing in your homework today. Anybody have any questions?